If you're an artist that works with visuals, then you've probably heard of the term photorealism. Problem is, a lot of people don't seem to know what it means. After this video, you'll know exactly what photorealism is and what's wrong with it. But I'm also going to solve that by introducing a new way of thinking about photorealism. Let's do a little quiz. Is this photorealism? Or is this photorealism? This, or maybe this? All of these images are photoreal, but they are very different. So if they fall under the same category, then what is photorealism even? Realism has a lot of different definitions depending on whether you ask an artist or a philosopher. But for the sake of keeping this video simple and not a 3-hour lecture, I'll go for the artist approach and say that realism is trying to recreate the world as we perceive it. Photorealism, however, comes from the term photo, which is Latin for light. Photography actually means light drawing. However, when we speak of photorealism, oftentimes what we mean is an imitation of a photo in a different medium. Whether it's a painting or a 3D render, doesn't matter, it should look like a photo. So realism in art is when we try to imitate the world as we perceive it, while photorealism is trying to imitate a picture of that world. Now, there are 3 reasons why photorealism is problematic. I spent this New Year's holiday at my father's house at the edge of the city, and there's a lot less light pollution. So we saw a lot of fireworks from the entire town. So I decided to whip out my phone and take a picture. And this is that picture. There you have it, photorealism. Now this is a photo, but if I turn this into a 3D artwork, people would criticize me that it doesn't look photorealistic. So the first problem with photorealism is that there are different types of photos. And when we speak of photorealism, we are actually meaning a specific type of photograph. But of course there are smartphones that can take pictures, or DSLRs, or even an Arri Alexa. So there's already a difference in what type of photo you have depending on what kind of photo camera you have. I'll get to that later because it's very important. But first we need to understand the second problem with photorealism, which is this. When we make 3D renders, oftentimes we are not simply making a picture anymore. We are moving around the camera and basically shooting video. Photorealism is therefore broader than only pictures, as it extends to video as well. However, this has never been accounted for in the way we use our terms. Meaning that the term photorealism really doesn't suffice anymore for what we're trying to communicate. Think of lens reflections when we move beyond a certain object, or changing light conditions, such as in this James Bond scene, or this Unreal Engine game that took the world by storm, or even another effect, like a rack focus. I've got a solution for this that all ties back again at the end of this video, but the third problem is the biggest problem. Nobody seems to agree about what photorealism is. As a matter of fact, most people don't even dare use the term anymore without adding a disclaimer that photorealism is subjective. This is not necessarily the case, and you don't have to make a disclaimer like that. It simply implies a lack of understanding about what photorealism actually is. And I'm going to solve that right now. Photorealism must be further classified into different subsections in order to make sense. People are now trying to describe apples and oranges by pointing at them and calling both fruit. We are doing the same with photorealism. There are 3 different types of photorealism. The first one is cinematicism. Cinematicism comes from cinema, which comes from the Greek word kine, which means movement. So actually it's moving pictures. The definition of cinematicism is the use of video and lighting principles that have a basis in objective beauty standards. When people are making videos in Blender to make it look like it could be used in a movie, that's called cinematicism. Take the new Mario movie for example. It's stylized but also looks photorealistic. Of course, it obviously isn't the same as a photo, but because it uses these cinematic principles, it can be perceived as such. Therefore, cinematicism. A lot of people think art is subjective, but really it isn't. It isn't entirely objective either, but the two don't necessarily exclude each other either. But I'll dive into that in a different video. First, let's understand photocreationism. Photocreationism comes from the purposeful design of creating an artistic photo. There is purposeful placement of lighting, use of depth of field, and composition. However, it's not a moving picture like a movie. Photocreationism is what most artists strive for. It's the attempt to apply the same principles of photography in a different medium. Photocreationism is therefore an art in itself, and it has purposeful design in it, unlike our final classification, which is photonormalism. Photonormalism is an image that isn't crafted with design in mind. Take for example my fireworks picture. You can take out your phone right now and take a selfie, but if there isn't any motive or creative design, then it is photonormalism. And sometimes when you make a normal picture, it might look like photocreationism on accident. So you have cinematicism, photocreationism, and photonormalism. And the next time someone tells you they don't know what photorealism is, you can tell them. Now with this video, I have paved the path to clear up our thinking about photorealism. But it's also a way to spark debate. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Or do you think there are some missing classifications that we should add? Do you feel like you know more about photorealism after watching this video? I hope so, but think about it for yourself. And if you want to become an undeniable force in the 3D space, then I highly recommend watching this video next.